Hi, this is Malcolm Nance. I'm bringing you a special edition of Blackman Spy called Flash Traffic. What I want to do is I want to talk about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant complex and all the discussion that's been going on over the last week about the potential for Russian forces to either blow up the complex or to blow up specific reactors, damage it enough so that it would have one of two consequences. One, a meltdown of an active reactor, which would cause a radiological catastrophe all across Europe, maybe not on the scale of 3 Mile Island, and certainly not on the scale of Fukushima in Japan, but enough to spread radiation all across Ukraine and a pretty good part of Russia and Central Europe. On the other hand, the destruction of the infrastructure, which Russia has been practicing the entire time. So let's take a look at this. Over the last few weeks, we received a series of warnings by the government of Ukraine that the Russians have mined the reactors number 3 and number 4 at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant complex. This complex is the largest cluster of nuclear power plants in Europe. It is one of the biggest producers in Europe, but it's of a relatively modern design. It's not like the old Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It has a lot more safeguards, a lot more containment features, but it is a very, very big complex. Now, when Russia invaded Ukraine, they took over the control of that complex. They kept the Ukrainian workers on who were operating the power plant, and from time to time have allowed the International Atomic Energy Agency to come in and take a look at what's going on. However, as President Zelensky said just recently, there are only 4 IAEA inspectors, and on occasion, some drop in to take a look at a complex that's the size of a city. As a matter of fact, Enogadar, the city which it's comprised of, is a huge sprawling complex with these 6 nuclear power plants in a row. So there have been damage to infrastructure around there due to fighting early on in the war. From the beginning of the war, Russia has taken over that complex, and it's been run by Rosatom, which is Russia's atomic energy agency. But Malcolm, why are we worried about this now? Why are you making an emergency broadcast about this power plant? Because Ukrainian intelligence, especially Ukrainian internal security, have been receiving indications that Russia not only plans to damage the complex, that they themselves may be ready to create a nuclear disaster should Russian forces collapse. Short of that, if Russia is forced to withdraw, they may not create a nuclear disaster. They may just collapse the complex in critical infrastructure and make it unusable by Ukraine for decades, if not a decade or more, by breaking containment buildings, blasting the infrastructure that would cool the reactors, and damage it in such a way that you could not put the reactors back online. Now, all the reactors there, except for reactor number 5, are in what's called cold shutdown. That's where they release these containment rods that stop the nuclear fission process and make sure that it does not go through critical mass and create electricity. Now, power plant number 5 is still in operation. It's in what they call hot shutdown, which means that it's producing enough energy so that the cooling systems for the other reactors in itself and the power plant systems throughout the complex are still there. So it's essentially creating steam so that it can power the turbines which create electricity for the complex. Now, we haven't heard about reactor 5 being one of the ones that's in danger, but we have heard about reactor 3 and 4. The fact that they're in cold shutdown tells us that Russia most likely plans, if they in fact blow up their containment buildings or other parts of the complex, to actually do vandalism against the complex after they withdraw, or if they're forced to withdraw by the Ukrainian army. Now, if they were to blow up reactor 5, that is a completely different matter. Then you have mini Chernobyl. But as of right now, there are some indicators that lead us to believe Russia plans to do just that, but maybe they haven't made the final preparations for it. Number one, Russia passed a decree in the last week which said that nuclear power accidents under their control cannot be investigated by anyone as a matter of law. So they're getting on the books that if an accident happens, well, no one can look into it. They did the same thing when they blew up the Kakhovka Dam, flooding out tens of thousands of Ukrainians downstream. Then we saw a news advertisement in St. Petersburg, Russia, which is northern Russia, northwestern Russia, advertising for people to volunteer and get paid as specialists to learn how to clean up nuclear power plant accidents. Now, they just happened to do this on the day that the Ukrainians informed us that these power plants were being mined and quite possibly readied for demolition by Russia. Why would they need to do that? Because radiation that would come off of reactor 5 or radiation that's brought into the atmosphere in any way, whether they damage steam lines or containment buildings, that radiation could go back into Russia. After Chernobyl, most of it went northwest to Sweden and Norway. Then it went east into Russia and then west into Central Europe. I mean, it was so bad, Sweden spent years plowing up the top layer of dirt in their country to get rid of the basic level of radiation that fell from the sky. So that's number 2. Number 3, and most significant, is that Russia's denying that they're doing any of this. As we learned from the Kakhovka Dam incident, which was a massive infrastructure, that Russia's denial is almost a guarantee that they're going to do it. Those two are pretty good, but if Russia starts withdrawing its troops from that complex and starts moving them rapidly out of the area, but bringing in specialty trucks with tons of explosives, which can be observed, and the Ukrainians have good intelligence, then we know they are going to demolition the complex. Right now, my assessment is they're going to demolition the complex in order to turn it into just concrete junk so that the Ukrainians can't reactivate it quickly. I'm not sure at this point that they're going to create a meltdown. But this is an emergency we need to be prepared for, because we saw Senator Blumenthal and a Republican representative stated just a week ago that if they carry out a nuclear catastrophe or detonate an atomic bomb in one way, shape, or form, and it's always possible, the demolition of that complex could be done with a small tactical nuclear weapon. That would resolve the issue. That the United States would view that as a situation that would be just one step shy of war. They would invoke NATO, which would have to come in and have to carry out a massive rescue operation of radiation that would be going west into Ukraine and then into Poland and Central Europe. This is not a laughing matter. We need to be prepared mentally that Russia has the potential to do this, one way or the other. Whether it's vandalism and disrupting the complex or actually destroying the complex and causing a nuclear catastrophe around Europe. That complex is not going to blow up like an atomic bomb, but it could pop its cork like 3 Mile Island, where there was a crack in the containment dome, or Fukushima, where it popped like a cork and released radioactive steam particles and breaking down parts of the complex into the atmosphere, which will eventually go around the world in a matter of days. So pay attention to this. Watch Blackman Spy. Watch my Substack Special Intelligence, and I'll have more on it as I get news.